From Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA, and the home of hot chicken, it's the Rick Altizer Show. Sit back, buckle up. Rick will talk with the movers, shakers, and creators who put Christ in Christian entertainment. He's a man who's clear so the world can hear. Here's Rick Altizer.
Hey, thank you for joining me today for the Rick Altizer Show. That was Bob Allen, the voice of the Rick Altizer Show. Today, I have a special guest. You know, every Sunday, Saturday. Actually, Sunday I go to church. Saturday's when the show's on the air. Every Saturday, I always say, hey, I have a very special guest. But today, special just doesn't quite handle the kind of guest I have. I have with me today, I have a pastor, author, and speaker, John Driver, here from the Mount Juliet area. John, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Rick. I'm happy to be here.
And you know what makes it so special is that John and I have had a very special friendship for years.
Yep.
And John has been there in the trenches with me and my family, and as a matter of fact, officiated the marriage of my son and my daughter-in-law. So very excited about that.
Oh, I'm very happy to be here. A lot of good memories.
Yes. And John, we're going to talk about some of his books, writing. We're going to talk about the church. We're going to talk about all kinds of things. So it's going to be an exciting interview. So don't go away. Don't change that dial. So John has written for Reggie Dabbs. He's written 2 books for Reggie Dabbs. One just came out last year, Thomas Nelson, Just Keep Breathing.
Yes.
He's also written a book called Reggie. And Reggie, tell us a little bit about Reggie. He's spoken in front of how many kids?
Oh, there's no way to know.
18 trillion kids.
Yeah, he speaks to millions every year around the world.
So Reggie's speaking to kids, and so we get lots of stories on that. Also, you might have heard of Tim Hawkins, a comedian. John wrote his book, co-wrote with him, Diary of a Jackwagon. I love the thought of that, Thomas Nelson. And also David Ring, an evangelist with Baker Books in 2015, The Boy Born Dead, a great book. All these books, by the way, are available on Amazon.com, or you can go to johndriver.com and get information. Also, lots of articles with Relevant Magazine and other books he's written. The guy just does all kinds of things. He's always busy. And so, John, just thanks for so much for being on the show. I'm excited.
Oh, I'm happy to be here, man. It's going to be fun.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about, you've got Reggie Dabbs on the cover. Here's his picture, and it's a book called Reggie, with John Driver, you know, and then you've got Tim Hawkins. He's sitting there on a little funny cart, Diary of a Jackwagon. Tim Hawkins and John Driver, and then you've got The Boy Born Dead. David Ring is a picture of him, and there's your name down there. So talk to us about what that means. You're writing a book with them, about them, and your name's on the cover. So many people will have someone write the book for them, and they don't put their name on the cover. But these people are men of integrity, and they're putting your name on the cover. But talk to me a little bit about what you're doing here.
Sure. Well, I write some of my own books as an author and those kinds of things. But several years ago, I had the opportunity to write for Reggie. He was the first one. And so the actual term is collaborative writer. Sometimes you'll say co-author. But generally, when you go to look at books, you'll see it either a with or an and. If it says with, then that guy is what I often do, and he was the collaborator, the collaborative writer. And so even when you do the contracts, they say, hey, this is the author and this is the writer. It doesn't mean that the author is not also writing. It just means that the writer helps assist the process, almost like a manager helping to find a voice and then do some of the editing and the dirty work. Because a lot of these guys, if they're on the level that they're really writing books prolifically and putting out a lot of different things, then they're traveling a lot and maybe they're pastoring a large church. And so what I get to do is come along beside them and serve them with what I get to do as a writer, and that is listen to them. And I always tell them that, I'm an interpreter. I'm a translator. So, if you're going to go to a foreign country and you're going to speak, you're going to have an interpreter, and what they're going to say in their language is going to differ from the way you said it. It wouldn't be exactly the same. They have to take a phrase and make it sound right because it may not have the exact translation into their language. And so I tell them, listen, your voice on paper, even if you're a public speaker, even if you're a wonderful public speaker, is not going to sound the same as it does whenever you speak to a live audience. So my job is to translate what your voice is going to sound like on paper. And so we work with that and go back and forth, and they're allowed. I always tell them, hey, tell me if you hate something. Tell me if you don't like it, if this is way off. If you like it better than what you thought you'd have written yourself, then I did my job. So it's to help take their thoughts and their process, and everyone's different. Some say, hey, go off and bring me something back, and with my story, I'll do interviews and transcribe all of their their stories and their content and all those things, and try to just make it work for paper. Some of them we go line by line. It's very meticulous, and they're very determined to make, especially if you're writing comedy, things like that. My job is really to transcribe and get that economy of words just right for whatever they're doing. So it's just an awesome process. I've met some amazing people. It's been a much bigger blessing to me than I ever thought when I began to have the ability to use that craft to let someone's story be told to an audience that wouldn't get to hear it otherwise, and to hopefully make it in a version where it's translated into their language.
So for instance, let's take Tim Hawkins. He's never written a book before. Tim Hawkins writes comedy. Right. He goes on stage and is funny, and he's never written a book before. And so you're going to come in, and you're going to interview him, and he's going to talk and tell stories, and you're going to record those and then get them transcribed. Then you're going to take all that and put it together and write a book, but you're not going to make it sound like you wrote the book.
Right.
You have to make it sound like Tim wrote the book. Is that right?
Well, because Tim is writing the book. And that's, it's kind of a little bit like if you think of audiobooks. If you listen to an audiobook, it is the book. It's just in a different format. And so that's why he certainly is the author. It's all his content, all those things. Comedy is a funny thing because he had a lot of material on DVD. So it wasn't just live interviews. It was also a lot of transcribing of DVDs and other things. And maybe taking a 300-word joke or a 300-word bit, and expanding it on both sides with things that Tim and I talked about that might make it more readable, because it can't just be punchline. You have a lot of setup and a lot of other silly things. In that particular book, it got to bring out Tim's just really randomness,
it's
just
a great
random
book.
thoughts.
And I'll tell you what, if you love Tim Hawkins, I really recommend getting the audiobook, because Tim reads the audiobook.
Yep.
And and you really get his meter, his timing. Right. The way he delivers, it's so funny. My wife and I think, took a vacation to Gatlinburg, and we listened in the car.
Oh, that's great.
We listened in the car to the audiobook and just loved it. It was so good.
And his songs are in the audiobook as well. They actually put the music in, which is very unique to audiobooks. It's rare that ever happens.
It is an amazing thing. You're listening to the Rick Altizer Show on Bott Radio, 89.1 FM, 1160 AM, Nashville.
And so it's even, you get a little special bonus. You hear a couple of the songs as opposed to reading them in the book, the paper book. You get to hear them. So we talk about, you did the Tim Hawkins book, and it had a certain meter to it, a timing to it, and it sounded like, and especially when Tim was reading it, it was really natural to him. Mm-hmm. And the way you used your adverbs and the particular adjectives you used, and the way, how long or short or how wordy a sentence was, it was one particular way to him. Yet when you write for Reggie Dabbs, it's different. Right. And then when you write for David Ring, it's different there. So talk to me about how you're almost like a impersonator, like a person who sings like Michael Jackson here, and then he sings like Frank Sinatra there. You're impersonating their tone, their singing style, if you will. Talk about that, and just the challenge that takes to an author like yourself, who also writes as John Driver.
Right.
Talk about that and how different that is.
And I think that's been the surprising part, and it's the most nerve-wracking part of the process, is hoping, or in the beginning, trying to find a voice that the author is going to be comfortable with. A lot of that is just building relationship and building trust. But it really is like you're throwing a grenade over a wall and you're waiting for a response. When you send that first sample, like, oh man, I don't know if you're going to like this or not. I took this from our interviews, and here's me, dressing it up or making it, appropriate for the page. I really think that that ability to interpret it either happens or it doesn't happen in certain places. There's lots of times. There's a lot of books. If I listed to you the books that I almost wrote, it's more impressive than the ones that I have. And generally it wasn't because of a voice issue or other things, but it's just finding and that's what, the agents and the publishers do to help an author find the right helper that's really what our job is to do, is to really serve that author and to help them through the process. Because aligning that voice, they have to be really comfortable, and I hope that they're comfortable. That's always my goal. And I want to do I want them to continue doing the thing in their life that is going to cause a reader to want to read their book. I want them to have to stop for a year. And if you've never composed a 55 or 65,000 word manuscript, if that's not just daily life for you, it's pretty a daunting task. And so being able to take that off of them, so yes, they're still doing it and they'll spend hours and hours and hours, but knowing that, hey, once you go to bed, I'm going to be up editing this, or I'm going to be trying to make it, or send you another version where you can continue to add, your voice to it. So it's really just a trial by fire and a lot of trial and error, and we just try to figure it out as we go. Like I said, some, they like it the first time. They love the idea that someone's taking their thoughts and putting it on paper, and they're not as meticulous about the words. Some say, no, I would never say this and that. And so in both cases, I feel like it's success. Someone telling me I need 5 revisions on something, if we get it down and they really like it, then that's success to me. I don't see that as a problem, or that I failed the first 5 times. It's just trial and error. That's my job. But it's always easier if someone says, oh, that was great, let's leave it as it is, and then you get to move on, and it goes a little faster. It just depends on the author.
I'm speaking with pastor, author, and speaker John Driver, and he's pastors here in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. And so we're talking about some of these books that he's co-authored. What was the word? Collaborative works. So you write books as John Driver, and then you write with other people. And as a matter of fact, we're going to probably talk about this a little later. You've got a new book coming out October 1st, written with Todd Wagner, called Come and See, and that's kind of new, upcoming.
Yes.
What do you know where that'll be coming out on?
David C. Cook is the publisher, and it'll be available everywhere books are sold. So you can find it anywhere, Amazon or bookstores.
Excellent. I want to talk about that a little later. Todd Wagner is the pastor of the Watermark Church in Dallas, a big 15,000 member church. I was just down there about a month and a half ago, and it's like a major complex there. It's massive, and where I was going by on a Wednesday night and where they were parking, it was crazy. I mean, you were just driving. These neighborhoods are just full of all these cars because they couldn't hold the cars. So we talk about the different voices, writing for different people. And I know your background. You had your educational background actually is in history, and you were a history teacher at one point.
Correct.
And so you've been an educator and have had this dream of wanting to be a writer.
Right.
And now you've got, 3 books with Thomas Nelson, 1 with Baker Books, 1 coming up with David C. Cook. I mean, you're a published author. And I knew you 10 years ago when, that was a dream for you. So some of the people listening, just to kind of put it in context for you, might have that dream. I might have some authors out there listening right now, want to be authors. Talk about your progress of how you got to, boy, I would love to be able to write, to being able to do this while you're maintaining a full-time career as a teaching pastor and, a father and a husband and other things in your life while you're maintaining a busy life. How did you navigate and transition from, I'd like to be an author, I'd like to write books, to now having multiple books published in all Christian bookstores right now? Well,
I think that there's going to be no formula for everyone or anything like that. This is certainly not the way that I thought I would be writing. I think this is my 6th. I have a new one coming. I'm starting a new one that just signed with another publisher. I think it'll be my 6th collaborative write. And when I thought I'd be an author or whatever, they'd be my own books, and I'm still writing those things. And in some ways, though, I've become so accustomed to what I do that in some ways I'm more critical of myself now, but it doesn't offend me. I go, oh yeah, well, they shouldn't sign this book because I know that I get sort of the process instead of being offended by it. So I'm a little more patient in what I'm doing in my own things, I hope. But at the end of the day, the key, I think, to writing in particular, if you're going to write prose, you're going to write books, it's going to be you have to really love the craft. You cannot write to be published. It will drive you out of your mind. I wrote my first manuscript when I was 21 in college, and I had no clue. I just thought, well, how many 21-year-olds are writing books out there? This will be an easy process. And I found out and submitted to all these publishers and got rejected by every one of them. They all liked the writing, but no one knew who I was, and they weren't going to, take a chance on a new guy and a platform. And so I was, oh man, my pride was so injured, over all the things I'm not, this and that. And I think the key was, I remember a guy challenged me, a guy named Mark Batterson. Actually, I was asking him the similar question to what you're asking me, and he was an author that I love to read. And he just said, hey, did God call you to be published, or did God call you to write? And that reminded me of you just need to do what you're supposed to do and enjoy it. And I absolutely enjoy it. I'm at the age now, my daughter's old enough and other things. If I go on vacation, things like that, I try to really be present. In my early days, I loved writing so much. Even my vacations, I would sit and write books. And occasionally my wife will still allow me to, but I like to have a little more downtime than I did. But I wrote 10 books before anything was ever published or so. And I wrote millions of words, and for nobody but the Lord. That was it. Or for my students, when I was a student pastor, I would write those things, or for my church. And there's that you have to be okay with the world, considering that humiliation to some extent. Well, how unsuccessful you must be if you have written now 5 books, you put all this time and energy, and you're paying your own money to even have a few copies bound, and no one even cares, and no one's reading it. And those are just the real feelings. That's what it looks like. But I just love it. To this day, I still enjoy that process. And so those 10 books prepared me to be able to write a Reggie Dabbs book, or to be able to write a Tim Hawkins book. So that cranking out 200 pages is really not the hard part for me. Now that's really second nature. And so some of that is just becoming accustomed to the craft and enjoying the craft of it. And so I would just encourage anyone to not focus on end games. Of course, Rick, you know this. I was in a band before. I've picked a lot of stable things in my life to pursue, music and things like that. And music is just as bad, if not worse, especially, you grow up in the Nashville area and all those things. Always tying your success or your confidence or your security in something to its result or to its end game, instead of ascribing to it the intrinsic value of what it is in this moment. And so you literally do not stop and enjoy what you're doing. You're always just pitching and always trying to arrive somewhere differently. And so coming to the place, and I know I'm approaching 40 and all those things, it's going to be a better perspective, and it'll continue hopefully to sharpen and all grow again and again every year. But coming to the place where I go, you know what, I enjoy this. I enjoy serving an author. In fact, it's probably easier now for me to collaboratively write than it is to write my own stuff. I think I still overthink my own. Those times are coming. I still write it, but those times are coming. Probably that'll be more predominantly what I do. But I hope God always gives me opportunity to serve people, because I have learned from every single thing. In the beginning, humbling myself. Well, this is not even my voice. This is not even my story. This is not even my message. But wow, to see those messages reach people and to be a part of it, there's just something very pure about it. And the good news, too, is just from a practical side, that you can like the writing. If the book doesn't sell a lot of copies, no one ever blames me for that. That's always on the author. I always say, hey, this is great. I can be free to not worry about the results. I can just try to create, something that's meaningful and something that's enjoyable and something that's easy to read and that's going to bless people. And I can help with book sales and all those things, but that's not my role. My role here is to really get to engage in the craft.
In case you didn't realize it, you're listening to a really nice guy. The Rick Altizer Show on Bott Radio, 89.1 FM, 1160 AM, Nashville.
It's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking, I'm talking with pastor, author, and speaker John Driver, and we're talking about the collaborative work that he does for known evangelists or comedians or speakers, and he's kind of the guy behind the scenes writing the book for them, for those who just kind of came in late. But I was thinking how similar that was to what I did with Shonda Pierce making the movie with her, and now with Russ Taff, is that I'm telling their story.
Right.
And I need to do their story justice. And there's lots of different things I can say and tell. There's lots of different stories that can be told. And so finding what the story is, what it is that needs to be. It's almost like an editor editing their multiple stories. So talk about that. Is that, and we're going to get back to getting the book deal. I want to get back to that, but
Sure.
But just real quick on a little sideline on that. Talk about that, about what to include and what not to include.
Well, the David Ring book the David Ring book reads like a novel. It's because we wrote it to make it a movie. It was the original. I actually have written a screenplay to go along with it that there's a producer in Hollywood and all these things. It's just on permanent hold at present. That's just kind of how it goes. So learned a lot as you went. But that particular, we told it as a story, real life, but also, added some, just like a made-for-TV type or based on a true story type movie that you would read. That's how we wrote the book, and we explained that in the book. So the things happened, but there may be a character here that we ascribe a name to who was just some faceless kid in the old story, to help the story flow and all those things. And man, when you take it, that interview process, hey, this is someone's life. In his particular case, this is his life. He's in his late 60s, and we're talking about, hey, let's go back to 1967 and let's start telling the story. And then when do we flash back and when do we go forward, and what is the takeaway? It's a mess. And in all reality, sometimes I think, and I told you, I'm more comfortable collaborating now for someone else because you're right. I'm seeing it from a perspective they could never see it from. They know what they think works, and there are things they're going to be very passionate about. But I hope to come in and say, yeah, that works, but I think I would save it for here. Or, you know what, that may not be as powerful as you think, but this really jumped out at me. So being that extra set of eyes and ears, I think I would enjoy that now. I'm not so hilarious, but I would love to have a collaborator. Someone, and I do. I actually seek out community in my life that hey, look at this and tell me, I think this sounds right, but I've looked at it too long. This is too close to me.
Yes, you get so. My wife was a huge help for me with that first Shonda movie because you get so myopic. You've spent so much time on it. You've seen it so much. You've thought, and to have that outside perspective. This is what this is about. This is what's powerful about this. Sometimes we lose that.
Right.
So that's great. Talking about the looking for collaboration. We've collaborated on songs.
Yeah.
We've written many worship songs together, and there's something powerful in that collaboration. And so that's great to think of for a young writer, to think about, collaborate with someone.
Absolutely.
And so I wanted to get back to, as we kind of close up here, I wanted to get back to this, what you were talking about. When I'm writing for validation, when I'm writing so that I can get a book deal, or so that I can get published, or so that I can get a record deal, or so I can get this deal or that. When I'm writing for some, like you called it an end game, and I'm kind of saying some kind of validation and proof that, yes, you're not a loser. Yeah, we like you. We approve of you. We're going to give you thumbs up and throw money at you.
Right.
When that is your motivation, joy doesn't show up in that.
No.
And when I'm writing for Christ and Him alone, now I have joy because success is defined differently. Can you take that and run with it?
Well, I will say this. I certainly enjoy when there's a publisher, and I enjoy that process more. And there is something to be said for, hey, it's great to be paid for your craft. And for those guys, look, I would say this: keep your job. If you're going to write, I've written at night. I've written, and you have to have your spouse on board. There are times that she has to say, hey, no, we're not going to spend 4 hours tonight. I need you here. You're spending that on a book that no one's ever, But she has been so supportive of that. And so those conversations just have to be honest. But at the end of the day, I was thinking about something else Batterson said. He said, listen, you cannot create opportunities. You can only be ready for them when they come. Opportunities are in the Lord's hands. You cannot pick which door is going to open, but you can be ready to walk through various ones as they do. So it really is a readying and a being true to that craft. And there is, and you're right, man, that's where joy is. There's nothing better than going, I enjoyed this because I know it was right. And then if God adds something to it or He doesn't, work hard, pursue the publishers. Those things are great, but don't let them be the all-consuming factor of it, because it can have so much value outside of just what it does in a marketplace.
When my ambition is to serve Christ and to please Him, that's fulfilling. When my ambition is to please people, it's always a recipe for disaster. So I'm going to ask you a favor, and since you're my friend, I know what you're going to have to say. Can we do one more interview? Can I do a part 2 with you?
Sure.
All right. Okay, so come back next week because we are going to talk about this new book coming out, and there's some more great stuff. This is a great interview, and there's more stuff coming out. So come back with me next week for part 2 of my interview with John Driver. John, thanks for being with us.
Hey, it was my pleasure.
Turn my eyes away from worthless things. Preserve my life according to your word. Preserve my life according to your word. Turn my eyes away from worthless things.
The music you are listening to is from my scripture memory record, and I want to give it to you for free. Just go to my website, rickaltizer.com, and click Contact. Altizer is spelled Altizer. Or how about liking my Facebook page, facebook.com/Rick Altizer Show. And I want to thank you for listening. So be sure to check us out again next week as we discuss how we communicate the gospel through media to our culture. Let's be clear so the world can hear. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.